The flame extinguished. The aroma of caramelized onions and simmering herbs filled the small kitchen as Naomi Winters worked her magic. At 26, she was the sous chef at Riverdale's only upscale restaurant, the Copper Spoon. Her hands moved with practiced precision, chopping, stirring, and seasoning with an intuition that had impressed even the most critical food enthusiasts in their small Connecticut town. "Chef wants to know if the special is ready," called Javier, one of the line cooks poking his head through the swinging door. "2 minutes," Naomi replied, carefully plating her creation, a reimagined ratatouille that had become her signature dish. Though the Copper Spoon was modest compared to big city establishments, Naomi had managed to infuse the menu with touches of brilliance that kept locals coming back and occasionally drew visitors from Hartford and beyond. As she wiped her hands on her apron, her thoughts drifted to Dominic Cavalieri, who would be waiting for her after her shift. 6 months into their relationship, and she still felt a flutter of excitement at the thought of seeing him. The heir to the Cavalieri Hotel group had walked into the Copper Spoon during a visit to inspect a potential property acquisition and had been captivated not just by Naomi's cooking, but by her passionate descriptions of how food could tell stories. Their romance had blossomed quietly, away from the scrutiny of Riverdale's gossip mill and, more importantly, away from the watchful eyes of the Cavalieri family. Dominic had warned her that his parents were traditional and had expectations, but Naomi hadn't fully grasped what that meant until tonight. Later that evening, dressed in a simple but elegant blue dress she'd splurged on, Naomi entered the Grand Cavalieri estate for the first time. The family was hosting a dinner to celebrate the acquisition of a historic property they planned to transform into their newest luxury hotel. "You look beautiful," Dominic whispered, squeezing her hand as they approached his parents in the opulent living room. "Just be yourself. They'll love you." Eleanor Cavalieri, immaculately styled in designer clothes that probably cost more than Naomi's monthly rent, gave her a once-over that felt like an inspection. Lawrence Cavalieri barely looked up from his conversation with another guest. "Mother." "Father," Dominic said, his voice carrying a formality Naomi hadn't heard before. "This is Naomi Winters." "The chef," Eleanor said, her smile not reaching her eyes. How quaint. The evening spiraled downward from there. Throughout dinner, Naomi endured subtle jabs about her humble origins and limited prospects. When she mentioned her dream of opening her own restaurant that would blend traditional techniques with innovative concepts, Lawrence laughed outright. "My dear, do you have any idea of the capital required for such ventures? The failure rate for restaurants is astronomical. Even for those with proper backing and connections. Naomi is incredibly talented," Dominic defended, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm sure she is." "Darling," Eleanor replied, "for her level. But surely you understand that the Cavalieri name has certain associations that must be maintained." The whispers started the very next day. Somehow, word had spread through Riverdale about Naomi's disastrous dinner with the Cavalieris. Even at the Copper Spoon, she noticed sideways glances and hushed conversations that stopped when she entered the room. "I heard she's just after his money," she overheard Bethany, a waitress she'd considered a friend, saying in the break room. "I mean, come on, a hotel heir and a line cook? She's obviously playing the long game." The final blow came when Dominic met her at their usual spot by the lake, his expression grim. "My family is relocating me to oversee the San Francisco properties," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "It's a significant opportunity." "When will you be back?" Naomi asked, already knowing the answer. "Naomi, you're amazing, truly. But my family, our worlds, they're just too different." As she walked home alone that evening past familiar streets that now felt alien, Naomi made her decision. By morning, she had resigned from the Copper Spoon, packed her essential belongings, and withdrawn her modest savings. Without saying goodbye to anyone, she boarded a bus headed west, her culinary notebooks clutched to her chest, the only part of her dream she couldn't bear to leave behind. Embers among ashes. The Seattle rain pattered against the window of Naomi's cramped studio apartment, mirroring the tears that had become her nightly companion. 3 months had passed since she'd fled Riverdale, and the pain of rejection still burned fresh. Her apartment was sparse, a bed, a small table, and a kitchenette where she experimented with recipes when she wasn't working double shifts at Harborview Diner and Pike's Corner Cafe. "Order up for table 7, shouted Vernon, the gruff short-order cook at Harborview. Naomi grabbed the plates, mustering a smile for the customers that never reached her eyes. This wasn't where she had imagined herself at 26, serving mediocre food that violated every culinary principle she held dear. Each night after her shifts, despite bone-deep exhaustion, she would cook. The kitchenette became her sanctuary, where she refined the recipes that had once earned her praise. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between stirring and tasting, Dominic's face would appear in her mind, followed quickly by his mother's disdainful expression. On those nights, she'd push herself harder, cooking until dawn broke over Elliott Bay. "You're going to work yourself to death," observed Imani, her neighbor and only friend in Seattle. A graphic designer with dreams of launching her own brand, Imani recognized the hunger in Naomi's eyes. "You need to give yourself time to heal." "I'm fine," Naomi insisted, sliding a plate of experimental croquettes across her tiny table. "Try these." Imani took a bite and closed her eyes. "Okay, this is ridiculous. You're making this in a shoebox." "Kitchen, and it's better than anything I've eaten at actual restaurants." She fixed Naomi with a serious stare. "You're wasting your talent carrying plates for minimum wage." That conversation planted a seed, but it was an unexpected encounter that helped it take root. While shopping for ingredients at Pike Place Market, Naomi literally bumped into Reginald Porter, a retired chef whose cookbook had been one of her earliest inspirations. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking," she began, then froze when she recognized him. "You're Reginald Porter." The older man smiled, his eyes crinkling. "Indeed I am. And you are?" "Naomi Winters. I'm a chef. Or was trying to be." Something in her tone made him look at her more carefully. "No such thing as was trying to be, young lady. Either cooking speaks to your soul, or it doesn't." Despite her reluctance, Naomi found herself having coffee with Reginald, pouring out her story. Instead of pity, his weathered face showed understanding. "I was born in the projects in Chicago," he told her. "First kitchen I worked in, the head chef told me I'd never amount to more than dishwasher, said my kind didn't have the refinement for haute cuisine." He sipped his coffee. "Opened my first restaurant at 30. Got my Michelin star at 42. By the end of their conversation, Reginald had offered her something precious, a chance. His former sous chef was opening a new bistro and needed staff who could think beyond conventional boundaries. "It won't make you rich," Reginald warned, "but it's a place to rebuild." The bistro, terrain, was everything the Copper Spoon had aspired to be. Located in a renovated industrial space, it emphasized locally sourced ingredients and innovative techniques. The head chef, Julian Mercer, was demanding but fair, recognizing Naomi's potential even as he pushed her to refine her skills. "Your flavors are bold, but your presentation needs work," he'd critique. "And you're holding back. There's something you're not letting yourself express in your cooking." He wasn't wrong. Naomi kept parts of herself locked away, afraid of the vulnerability that came with truly putting her heart into her food. The rejection in Riverdale had taught her that passion made you vulnerable, and vulnerability led to pain. Everything changed the night Julian fell ill with food poisoning from a street vendor's tacos. With no time to find a replacement, Naomi was thrust into leading the kitchen for a fully booked evening. "Just follow the menu," Julian instructed from his sickbed via phone call. "Nothing experimental." For 2 hours, Naomi did exactly that, executing Julian's menu with precision. But when a food critic from Seattle Weekly unexpectedly arrived, panic rippled through the staff. "He's here for Julian's cooking," whispered Tessa, one of the line cooks. "We should tell him to come another night." Naomi looked through the kitchen doors at the middle-aged man studying the menu and made a split-second decision. No. Tell him we're offering a special tasting menu tonight. Limited availability. But Julian said— I know what Julian said, Naomi interrupted, already pulling ingredients. But this is our chance to show what terrain is really about, taking risks, pushing boundaries. For the next hour, Naomi created a 5-course menu that told her story, her childhood in Connecticut, her growth as a chef, the pain of rejection, and her journey to Seattle. The final dessert, a phoenix-shaped pastry rising from a plate decorated with edible ashes and delicate sugar flames, was a declaration of rebirth. When the critic finished, he asked to speak with the chef. Heart pounding, Naomi approached his table. That, he said simply, was one of the most honest meals I've ever eaten. He studied her face. You're not Julian Mercer. No, sir, he's ill tonight. I'm Naomi Winters, his line cook. The critic's eyebrows rose. Well, Ms. Winters, I think Seattle's culinary scene just got more interesting. The review, published 3 days later, praised the raw, emotional intelligence behind the food and predicted that Naomi Winters is a name that will soon be on every food lover's lips. Julian, instead of firing her for insubordination, recognized opportunity when he saw it. I want you to develop a separate tasting menu, he told her. Your voice alongside mine. Equal billing. That night, for the first time since leaving Riverdale, Naomi cried not from pain, but from a tentative, fragile hope. As she wiped away her tears, she opened her notebook and began to write, not recipes, but a business plan. The flame that had nearly been extinguished was finding new fuel ready to grow stronger. Kindling the spark, the line outside Terrain stretched down the block. Patrons willing to wait hours for a taste of what Seattle Monthly had dubbed culinary storytelling at its most vulnerable. 8 months after her impromptu tasting menu had caught the critics' attention, Naomi had become the bistro's main attraction, her Phoenix table requiring reservations weeks in advance. Table 9 sent their compliments, Tessa reported. Now Naomi's devoted assistant rather than just a line cook. The woman said the second course made her cry. Naomi nodded, focused on plating her signature dish, rejection consommé. A crystal-clear broth so intensely flavorful that it seemed impossible something so transparent could carry such depth. The dish represented how pain, when distilled properly, could become clarity. Julian had proven to be the mentor she needed, teaching her the business aspects of running a kitchen while giving her creative freedom. Their partnership had transformed Terrain from a promising new bistro to one of Seattle's most talked-about restaurants. You've got that look again, Julian observed late one night as they sat reviewing the week's numbers. The one that says you're plotting something. Naomi hesitated, then slid a folder across the table. Inside was her meticulously developed business plan for Phoenix, a restaurant entirely her own, centered around the concept of transformation and resilience. Julian flipped through the pages, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. This is good, Naomi, really good. The concept, the financial projections, you've done your homework. But, she prompted, hearing the hesitation in his voice, but you're playing it safe. He tapped a section outlining the location, a modest space in an up-and-coming neighborhood with reasonable rent. This isn't thinking big enough. Your food deserves a showcase. I'm being realistic, she defended. First-time restaurateurs fail at alarming rates, especially when they overextend. Julian leaned forward. That's the Cavalieri family talking. Not you. The words hit like a physical blow. Naomi hadn't spoken of Riverdale or the Cavalieris since her one vulnerable moment with Julian months ago, after too many glasses of wine during inventory. You're ready for more than this, he continued gently, and I know someone who might agree. The someone turned out to be Vivian Zhang, a formidable restaurant investor known for backing culinary innovators. Vivian had dined at Naomi's Phoenix table 3 times, always observing more than commenting. Their meeting took place at Vivian's office overlooking Puget Sound. the Seattle skyline creating a dramatic backdrop. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, Vivian projected the same kind of power Eleanor Cavalieri had, but without the cruelty. "Julian speaks highly of you," Vivian said, gesturing for Naomi to sit. "But what interests me is how your personal journey infuses your food. That can't be taught." For 2 hours, they discussed Naomi's vision, Vivian challenging every assumption and pushing for bigger thinking. By the end, Naomi felt both drained and exhilarated. "Your current plan is sensible," Vivian concluded. "It would probably succeed modestly, but I don't invest in modest successes." She slid a proposal across the desk. "This is what I envision for Phoenix." The numbers made Naomi's breath catch: a prime downtown location, state-of-the-art kitchen equipment, a design budget that would allow her to create the perfect environment for her food. The investment was 5 times what she'd planned to seek. "Why would you take this risk on me?" Naomi asked, genuinely perplexed. Vivian's gaze was penetrating. "Because talent that's been tempered by humiliation and rejection is rarely wasted. You have something to prove, not to others, but to yourself. That kind of drive, when channeled properly, is worth betting on." With Vivian's backing, Phoenix took shape over the next 6 months. The space, a former bank with soaring ceilings and dramatic architecture, was transformed into a restaurant where each dining area represented a stage of transformation. The entrance through subdued, ash-colored spaces gradually gave way to vibrant, flame-inspired design elements, culminating in the golden-hued main dining room. Opening night brought Seattle's culinary elite, food critics, and influential bloggers. Naomi, directing her hand-picked team with quiet confidence, presented a menu that had evolved from her early experiments at Terrain. Each dish told part of a story, her story, but also a universal one about resilience and reinvention. As the evening progressed, the reviews began appearing online, glowing with praise. "Phoenix doesn't just serve food, it offers catharsis," wrote one critic. "Winters has created something revolutionary, a dining experience that nourishes both body and wounded spirit." By midnight, champagne was flowing in the kitchen as Naomi and her team celebrated their triumph. Reginald Porter, now a cherished mentor, raised a toast to Naomi, who reminds us that our darkest moments can fuel our brightest creations. Later, after everyone had gone, Naomi sat alone in her restaurant, absorbing the reality of what she had accomplished. Her phone buzzed with a text from Imani. "The world is finding out what I already knew. You're extraordinary." For the first time, Naomi fully believed it might be true. Blazing forward, 2 years flew by in a blaze of success. Phoenix had not only survived, but thrived, earning a Michelin star in its first 18 months, an almost unheard-of achievement for a new restaurant. Naomi's innovative approach to cuisine, weaving emotional narrative through expertly crafted dishes, had created a new paradigm in fine dining. Food and Wine magazine had featured her in their Chefs to Watch issue, praising her revolutionary vulnerability in cooking. A documentary filmmaker was following her for a series on culinary innovators. Most significantly, wealthy investors were approaching her about expansion opportunities, Phoenix restaurants in San Francisco, Los Angeles, even New York. "You need to decide what kind of empire you want to build," advised Vivian during their quarterly review. Now more mentor than investor, she had become one of Naomi's most trusted confidants. "I'm not sure I want an empire at all," Naomi confessed, toying with the rim of her espresso cup. They sat in Phoenix's private dining room during the quiet hours between lunch and dinner service. "Opening more locations means less time in the kitchen, less control over quality." "True," Vivian acknowledged. "But it also means more influence, more opportunity to change the industry. And," she added with unusual gentleness, "more chances to help others who might be where you once were." The comment struck a chord. Despite her success, Naomi had never forgotten the humiliation of being deemed not good enough by the Cavalieris and the subsequent abandonment by people she'd considered friends. She thought often about other talented chefs facing similar barriers, economic, social, racial, to being taken seriously in the culinary world. Her contemplation was interrupted by Olivia, her assistant, who entered with a tablet. "Sorry to interrupt, but this just arrived from the Culinary Heritage Foundation. They want you to be the guest of honor at their annual gala next month." Naomi skimmed the invitation, then froze when she reached the location. "Riverdale, Connecticut? I thought it might be your hometown," Olivia said. "Is that a problem?" After Olivia left, Vivian studied Naomi's troubled expression. "You never went back, did you?" "No, there was nothing for me there." "And now?" Naomi looked around at what she had built, a testament to her talent and perseverance. "Now there's nothing they can take from me." The decision to accept the invitation triggered a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. The Culinary Heritage Foundation was prestigious. Their annual gala raised funds for culinary education and preservation of traditional cooking techniques. Being asked to serve as guest of honor was a significant professional accolade. It also meant confronting her past on her own terms. In the weeks leading up to the event, Naomi channeled her nervous energy into a new project, one she had been considering since her conversation with Vivian. Working with her legal team and financial advisors, she established the Phoenix Rising Fellowship, designed to provide culinary education, mentorship, and startup funding for promising chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds. "We'll announce it at the gala," she told her inner circle during a planning meeting. "The first 5 fellowships will be awarded to Connecticut residents, with priority given to applicants from Riverdale." The night before departing for Connecticut, Naomi received an unexpected call from Julian. "Heard you're heading back to the scene of the crime," he said, his voice warm with concern. "You okay with that?" "I think so," she replied, watching Seattle's lights twinkle outside her apartment window. She had upgraded from her tiny studio to a spacious loft, but had resisted the trappings of excessive luxury. "It's just a town. They can't hurt me anymore." "Of course they can't," Julian agreed. "But sometimes old wounds reopen in surprising ways. Just remember, you're not going back as the person who left." Upon arrival in Riverdale, Naomi was struck by how small everything seemed. The main street, once the center of her world, now felt quaint rather than impressive. The Copper Spoon, where she'd once been so proud to work, looked dated and provincial. She checked into the Oakwood Inn, deliberately avoiding the new Cavalieri Hotel that now dominated the town center. Local news had covered her return extensively. The hometown chef made good was big news in a small community. Several former acquaintances had already reached out via social media, suddenly remembering their close friendship now that she was successful. The afternoon before the gala, Naomi visited her old apartment building, now renovated into upscale condominiums. Standing on the sidewalk, looking up at her former window, she felt a strange detachment. The painful memories were there, but they had lost their power to wound. "Naomi? Naomi Winters?" She turned to find Bethany, the waitress whose cruel gossip had once cut so deeply, staring at her with disbelief. Now managing the Copper Spoon, according to the quick social media search Naomi had done before arriving, Bethany looked both older and smaller than in Naomi's memory. "Hello? Bethany?" Naomi replied calmly. "I can't believe it's really you. Everyone's talking about your return. Your success is it's amazing." Bethany's enthusiasm seemed genuine, but tinged with something else. Envy, perhaps, or regret. "Thank you," Naomi said simply. "Listen, a bunch of us are getting together tonight at the Spoon. A little reunion? You should come! Everyone would love to see you." The old Naomi might have craved that validation, being welcomed back by those who had once rejected her. The woman she had become recognized it as hollow. "I appreciate the invitation, but I have preparations for tomorrow's event." She offered a polite smile. "Maybe another time." As she walked away, Naomi felt the last vestiges of her past self falling away. Tomorrow would bring the gala and, inevitably, a confrontation with the Cavalieris, who as prominent local business owners would certainly attend. But for the first time, she looked forward to it not with dread or thoughts of vindication, but with a calm certainty in her own worth. The phoenix had truly risen from the ashes. The Phoenix Ascends. The Riverdale Country Club ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and meticulously arranged floral centerpieces. 200 of the region's most influential citizens had gathered for the Culinary Heritage Foundation Gala, paying $500 per plate to support culinary education and preservation efforts, and to see the hometown chef who had taken the culinary world by storm. In the preparation room adjacent to the main hall, Naomi adjusted her crimson gown, a creation by a Seattle designer who had been inspired by Phoenix's aesthetic. The dress, like her restaurant, told a story of transformation. Structured simply at the top, it cascaded into complex layers that shifted from deep burgundy to brilliant gold at the hem. 5 minutes, Ms. Winters, said the event coordinator, clearly starstruck. The president of the foundation will introduce you, then you'll give your address, followed by the dinner featuring your menu interpretations. Naomi nodded, taking a final glance in the mirror. At 29, she looked nothing like the heartbroken young woman who had fled Riverdale 3 years ago. Success had given her not just confidence, but serenity, a quiet certainty in her own worth that no external validation could enhance or diminish. Through the partially open door, she could see the Cavalieri family seated at a prominent table. Lawrence and Eleanor, both looking older than she remembered, sat rigidly beside Dominic, who was studying his program with uncharacteristic intensity. Beside him sat a poised blonde woman Naomi didn't recognize, presumably his wife or fiancée. Seeing them stirred less emotion than she had anticipated. They seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating, just people whose approval she no longer needed. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the foundation president, "it is my extraordinary honor to introduce our guest of honor. From humble beginnings in our very own Riverdale to culinary stardom, she has revolutionized fine dining with her emotionally evocative cuisine. Please welcome Naomi Winters!" The applause was thunderous as Naomi walked onto the stage. For a moment, she caught Dominic's eye. He looked quickly away, color rising to his face. "Thank you for that warm welcome," she began, her voice steady. "It's a unique experience returning to the place where your journey began. Riverdale shaped me in countless ways, some beautiful, some painful, all necessary." As she spoke about her culinary philosophy and the transformative power of food, Naomi could feel the room's energy shifting. These people had expected perhaps a success story, maybe even some subtle boasting. Instead, she offered something more valuable: vulnerability and authenticity. "We all face moments that threaten to define us," she continued. "Rejections that suggest we're not enough, not wealthy enough, not connected enough, not sophisticated enough." Her gaze swept the room, not lingering on the Cavalieri table, but not avoiding it either. "What I discovered is that these moments don't define us. How we respond to them does." Eleanor Cavalieri shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Lawrence stared stonily ahead. Dominic looked directly at Naomi now, his expression unreadable. "Which brings me to the real purpose of my return to Riverdale," Naomi said, her voice strengthening. "Today, I'm announcing the establishment of the Phoenix Rising Fellowship, a program that will provide culinary education, mentorship, and startup funding for promising chefs from disadvantaged backgrounds." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. "The first 5 fellowships will be awarded right here in Connecticut, with priority given to Riverdale residents," she continued. "Because talent exists everywhere, but opportunity doesn't. My personal pledge of $2 million will fund the first decade of fellowships, ensuring that no passionate chef is told their dreams are too ambitious or that they don't belong at the table." The applause was immediate and enthusiastic. Even Lawrence Cavalieri joined in, though Eleanor's hands remained still in her lap. Throughout the dinner that followed, a steady stream of guests approached Naomi to congratulate her and discuss the fellowship. Local business owners offered additional funding. The mayor suggested a culinary arts program at the community college. What had begun as a personal project was evolving into a community movement. It was nearly midnight when Dominic finally approached her, alone. His wife or girlfriend was deep in conversation across the room. "Naomi," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I don't know where to begin." "You don't need to begin anywhere," she replied gently. The past is past. What I allowed to happen, what I did, it was unforgivable. Naomi studied him thoughtfully. Nothing is unforgivable, Dominic. But some things can't be undone. They can only be learned from. Your success. It's extraordinary. You've become everything you said you would. He hesitated. I should have believed in you. Yes, she agreed simply. You should have. An awkward silence fell between them. Is there any chance, he began. No, Naomi interrupted, not unkindly but firmly. That chapter is closed. But I wish you well, truly. As he nodded and turned away, Naomi felt the final weight of her past lifting. There was no anger left, no desire for vindication or rekindled romance, just appreciation for the journey that had brought her here. Later that night, as the gala wound down, Naomi slipped outside onto the country club's terrace. The stars above Riverdale looked the same as they always had, but she viewed them differently now, not as distant, unreachable points of light, but as reminders that transformation was the universe's constant state. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. How did it go? Triumphant return? Naomi smiled as she typed her reply. Better than triumphant, peaceful. In the morning, she would meet with local educators to begin establishing the fellowship program. Then she would return to Seattle, to Phoenix, to the life she had built from the ashes of rejection. But something significant had shifted. Riverdale was no longer a place she had fled in shame. It was simply part of her story, neither romanticized nor demonized. As she gazed out at the town lights below, Naomi remembered the motto she had chosen for Phoenix, words inscribed above its entrance. From what consumes us, we emerge stronger. How true that had proven to be. When Imani called a moment later, eager for details, Naomi found herself struggling to articulate the complex emotions of the evening. Did you show them all who you've become? Imani asked. Was it the vindication you deserved? Naomi considered this, watching a shooting star trace its brilliant path across the night sky. It wasn't about vindication in the end, she replied. It was about coming full circle and realizing I'm no longer the person who needs it. So what happens next? Imani asked. Naomi smiled, feeling possibilities unfurling before her like flames reaching toward the sky. Next, we rise higher.